Hello, and welcome to Sunlight on Suffield. I'm Sandra Janik, and this is Neil Hornish, Melissa Silva, and Annie Hornish. Thanks for joining us tonight. We are going to be discussing the election. Trump won. And a lot of people are thinking or saying, you're hearing that a lot of the reason that Trump won is that Democrats were just too woke. What do you think? Do you think that's what happened?
I don't think it was because Democrats were too woke. Harris did not use many of the woke issues on her campaign, outside of women's reproductive rights. But the rest, I think this story that it was due to being overly woke is a distraction technique by the Republicans right now. And I think they're trying to weaken Democrats' resolve before they start, frankly, steamrolling vulnerable groups. That's what I think is happening.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, unless what your definition of woke is, if your definition includes women's reproductive rights or climate change, then okay, yeah, those were issues. But other than that, I didn't see any advertisements from anybody from the state representative race up to the president, at least in Connecticut, that discussed any issues other than mostly the economy and
women's
right to choose. Yeah.
Right. And even with the economy, do you think perhaps, now everybody, let's face it, the economy is a lot of it, and I don't mean this to be just brushing it off, but a lot of it is perception. The economy itself is very strong. Our country is the only one that has managed to bring in this global inflation back under control without creating another recession. But that doesn't equate to the cost of living and putting groceries on the table. And I think that's where a lot of I think the Democrats face a lot of issues.
And perhaps if they clarified that distinction better, that might have helped with races and explained it and why the economy is strong currently.
I think so.
Yeah.
And people were just feeling it personally. I mean, it came down to inflation, and as good as the economy was, not everybody was feeling the benefits of that economy. And immigration. Immigration is definitely an issue that needs to be addressed.
Oh, it is.
For everybody. So yes, the economy, people's perception of it, and I think immigration were the two real factors.
And people also have a very short memory with immigration. Immigration has been an issue for how many administrations? This has not just been a Democratic issue or a Republican issue. This has been an issue for administration after administration after administration. And people didn't want to hear that Vice President Harris had, negotiated a successful, or had been successful in negotiating what could have been a very a good step towards immigration control.
Got shot down.
And it got shot down by the other candidate, or got pulled. The rug he orchestrated pulling the rug out from under it, specifically for the reason of the election. But that didn't. Again, that didn't play into anything because, frankly, people, I don't think it wasn't close enough to their daily lives.
And I think people. The Democrats didn't utilize certain avenues like podcasting that Trump used to great effectiveness. And I think that was part of a drop ball. They were resorting to old methods of campaigning, tried and true, but not modernized.
The question that all of us kept asking ourselves leading up to the election. And then as we were watching the results come in, and for days afterward, was how could we as a nation do this with knowing the horrors of what happened in Germany? And watching the rise of Hitler and looking at perilous. How could we as a nation
Yeah.
get to the point where this happened?
I think a lot of people just voted, like we've been saying, based on their personal economic situation and their concerns about immigration. To your point, yeah, we ask ourselves today, how could good, decent people in the 1930s in Germany have allowed such a tyrant to do what he did and take power? And yeah, I think that's something that we need to think about today. Now, I think there were good, decent people who supported Trump for whatever reason, and I don't think they think that they want an autocracy, or they think the democracy is going to be fine.
Well, they think that he's not going to pull what he pulled the last time. They think he learned his lesson.
Yeah.
Right. But my response to that would be, when you see his cabinet members say this man is a fascist, they may say that's just hyperbole. But we have to keep an eye out. If we have to see what happens. So if we see him removing military leaders who don't put loyalty to Trump over loyalty to the country, if we see rank and file federal workers being removed because they don't pass the loyalty test, if we see attacks on journalists or retribution against political opponents. And I think the next big thing is if we see the Senate go into a recess so Trump can get his cabinet nominees without confirmation. I think that's going to be a big indication of where we're going, and I think we as a country are going to have to ask, how are good, decent people going to
allow this
react to
this?
And this is time the Democrats have to get strong, get firm, stand up for our values, because this is all fundamentally, our values.
Yeah, we need to stop being a lame duck.
Yeah.
That's
we do.
exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But what if we pull the focus in a little bit onto to Suffield and how things went on the election in Suffield?
Yep.
That's great.
Melissa, would you like to?
Yeah, sure. So from what we heard from the Register of Voters in Suffield, there was a total of 8,745 votes. Out of those votes, 2,241 were Democrat, 2,609 were Republican, 3,650 were unaffiliated, and then there was 245 other, meaning they don't have a class or a party, or they're a party that's not
Libertarian, Green Party.
not something major.
Yep.
For president, Harris got 4,164 votes. Trump received 4,331, and then other, which was write-in votes, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
Other candidates.
Other
right?
candidates,
Yeah,
okay.
write-in votes, yep.
137. That totaled 8,632 votes that were cast for president. That means that out of all the people who voted, 113 people in the town of Suffield did not vote for president, which is a big number considering Harris only lost by 167 votes in Suffield.
Yep.
Wow, that's huge.
think
That's a large percentage of it.
Well,
I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, the turnout for the vote was actually lower than 4 years ago, which is concerning, because this was the most extraordinary. It was a very consequential election, and very high profile, and a lot of people just didn't show up.
If I remember correctly, Darlene, our registrar of voters in Suffield, said that 4,000 were early voting.
Yes,
and
yes.
4,000 were at the polls.
Yep.
And there were like 500, I think she said, or something like that,
Absentee,
of absentee.
Yeah, absentee, yeah.
So
Yeah.
great for early
Yeah.
voting.
Yeah.
Hugely
the absentee
successful.
voting was turned, and that I think they did an excellent job. I
Yes, they
think our registrar of voters and staff did an excellent job.
Yep.
Yes.
With the early voting.
They did. It was flawless.
They were dealing with a lot. I was here early that first morning, and they were having some tech issues.
Yep.
And they had people in line, and they were just amazing. They just kept everyone moving along and calm, cool, and collected, and they were wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did a great job.
They were.
What I think what's very telling about the presidential race here in Suffield is if you look at the numbers, and by the way, all these numbers are available on the Taunton webpage at the Registrar of Voters website. You can look for election results. But the numbers you gave, Melissa, are very interesting because, yes, Trump won Suffield, but he only won it by 167 votes.
Yep.
And there were 368 more Republicans than Democrats who voted. So if we make the assumption that every Democrat voted for Harris
Yep.
and every Republican voted for Trump, then the rest falls with the unaffiliated, and in that case, the votes were almost split right down the middle. In fact, there's a little bit of an advantage towards Harris,
Right.
which, looking at that, I mean, we've heard, I mean, people, I think most people assume that Suffield is a more conservative town.
I think so, yeah.
But I think these numbers tell a different story. And also with the results for the Senate, the Democrat Murphy won. For Congress, the Democrat Courtney won.
Yep.
We need to do some work on the state side, but
Yep.
Yeah.
but I think what these results tell us is that Suffield is not necessarily a red town. It's definitely a purple town, and
Yeah.
it can
I
go
think
either
so,
way.
absolutely.
And I think, being a Democrat, I think the Democrats need to do a better job on messaging.
Yes.
If people have the perception that we're focusing only on, I don't like keeping using the term woke, but if we keep just focusing on certain issues, I mean, we also have stand on fiscal issues and economic issues, and we have to do a better job. And you know, if I may, just to call out some Democrats, I'm tired of hearing some Democrats who just throw their hands up in the air and say, "What can you do? It's a conservative town."
Yeah.
That's not. These numbers show that that's not
Not the
true.
case, yes.
This town can go either way.
Right.
So.
And we need to get out there more.
We absolutely need to get out there more.
But in Suffield, I'm sorry,
Okay.
in Suffield. So I know a lot of us were focused on the presidential election, but most of them were focusing on the swing states. Well, we're a swing town.
We are swing
We
town.
should have been,
Yep.
people should have been focused on town and swinging the vote in town.
Right.
Because it's getting a little out of hand with, well, what can we do? We're a conservative town.
Well, and I think we're seeing that, again, very much at the town level, as we're seeing it at the state level. And, well, the state level, again, on some of the...
State went bluer.
The state went-
Overall, the state went much bluer.
But I mean, Suffield, in terms of whether it's a local election or, you know, something going on directly in Suffield or just, you know, in the area.
Yeah.
Throwing our hands up and going, what can you do? It's not helping.
Yep.
Right.
And it's not representing the people.
Yeah.
Well, if you listen to some of these Board of Selectmen meetings, Colin keeps saying, well, we, because we all know he's talking about us,
Right.
say that Suffield, so last night at the Board of Selectmen meeting, he said something about the Charter Revision Commission and that the only people that they heard from were us, and we are not the voice of the town.
And
That's what Colin keeps saying.
And it's not even true. There were other people who shut
there
up
were.
to give
There were.
opinions too.
Actually, there were
Yeah.
quite a few
Yeah,
people who
there
had
were.
input.
There were.
Yes, but he seems to be focusing that it was our group of people,
True.
Yep.
which that's another story. But
Altogether.
yeah,
Well, that kind of ties in. Yes, what he's been saying is that the members of the public who've been attending the
meetings.
meetings
Yeah.
are just a small group of people. They only represent like 0.2% of the voting
He actually
population.
said 0.001.
Yeah, that's
that's-
bad math.
So,
Yeah.
and that kind of indicates that their opinions shouldn't be considered. I'm
Right.
paraphrasing. That's
Right,
not
right,
what he
right.
said.
Well, yeah.
That is not what he said.
But if we're going to go down that road, then just consider that the last town budget was approved by somewhere around 50 people.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Which is 0.5%.
Yeah.
So
Right.
if we're going to use his logic, then can we throw out the town budget and just
Because
redo
it was their,
Right.
it was
Only
their-
a few people, yeah, and it's-
not the good people, but not
Yeah.
the good people had any control over it.
And it's also, and just for disclosure, as you said, we've attended, Sunlight on Suffield has attended the meetings, we've recorded them all, they're all available online.
Yeah.
But it's also disrespectful to say that about people who take the time
Yeah.
to show up and
Right.
become more
Right.
better informed citizens.
Yeah.
And just because we happen to be showing up or just any group, say any group, anyone that shows up, just because they show up and state their opinion and their beliefs, doesn't mean they're the only one who feels that way.
That's
Correct.
right. That's
Just
right.
because we happen to show up
Yep.
and we happen to be active and we're making
Yep.
a point to try and record the show, the meetings and make them available to other
Yep.
people so they can see them at their convenience.
Yep.
Doesn't mean that our opinions shouldn't be respected. It doesn't mean that we don't represent other people.
That's right.
It just means
Yep.
we're the only ones who either
the time.
Yeah.
had the time or made the time.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, were able to
We're
get
very
there.
passionate about what they were talking about, like
Yeah.
the blight ordinance.
Exactly.
Yep.
Look how many
Exactly.
people showed up
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's an indication of what we're the tip of the iceberg over the surface of what's happening. The blight ordinance got shot down in flames
Yes.
at the town meeting.
Oh, absolutely
By a
it did.
lot of people who showed up. So that's
Yeah.
a great example. The town green policy,
Was great.
national attention. So
Yes.
to try to say it's just a few people is nonsensical. There's a lot
Right.
of people, and
I'm sorry, when you say the town green policy was great, you mean
the
That
killing,
was
the
removed.
destruction of it.
No,
Yes.
please do not
Yeah,
misquote
yeah,
me.
yeah.
I'm trying to say the fact that
Yes.
we were able to bring light on
Yep.
it, and
Yep.
we were able to get
Right.
National
national
attention.
Right.
attention
And-
on it.
and when-
that was great.
When it was moving or they were trying to move it, is
Because
when
it
all
was
the people
steamrolling.
rose up and
Yes,
spoke
which
out
was
against
wonderful,
it. So
and that's what we need to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Speaking of which,
Yeah.
let's talk about. No, there's always been the myth that Republicans are much more fiscally responsible than Democrats.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, before we get to that, if
Yes.
I could just, one other thing is, we mentioned the blight, the town green policy. There was also the certificate of occupancy
Oh, yeah, yeah.
ordinance
Yes,
that was
absolutely.
also voted
Yes.
down.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the blight and the certificate of occupancy ordinance was kind of voted down because people thought they were just too punitive.
Yes. Yep.
Right,
And-
absolutely.
Yep.
Right.
So,
And the blight, I swear, I'm suspicious, I should say. Colin's doing a speaking tour where he wants to go into residents' homes
Right.
to ostensibly speak with them.
Right.
I mean, frankly, he's not. We're not going to allow him into our home.
No, me neither.
Because what is he doing? Is he searching for blight? That was the first thing that crossed
Or
my mind.
animal ordinances.
Right. Exactly.
Or-
exactly.
Is he continuing to do his Friday mornings?
No.
No.
So this is to replace
Yes,
the Friday
yes.
mornings.
Yes.
And he's doing neighborhoods, so he will have a handler with him, as he typically does. They walk his other people from the Republican Party will escort him. He doesn't typically do things alone, so that's something to keep an eye out for. And
but I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You wanted to get to
I just wanted to talk for a couple of minutes about
Democrats can be fiscally responsible.
responsible.
That was
Yeah,
one, of the,
yeah.
one of the other things
Yeah.
that is applied. It applies, I think, from national, state to local, and really we hear it a lot all the way around.
Yep.
The Republicans are much more fiscally responsible. The us Democrats just like to pass out money.
Yep.
And yet we have some town.
10 minutes.
We have some town issues going on
Yep.
that sort of speak exactly opposite of that, don't we?
There are a couple of emerging issues that Sunlight on Suffield may have to delve into
Yeah.
and report on. I'll bring up one. There's recently a discussion about the emergency radio system.
Yep.
Which
And
is dying.
yes,
Yep,
Which
and it
absolutely
needs to be replaced.
So
Absolutely
there
needs
was
to be replaced.
And the information is kind of sketchy because the town attorney is saying we don't have to provide the information until the contract is signed, at which point it's too late.
Yeah.
But what we can gather is in the November 6th Board of Selectmen meeting, one of the bidders showed up at the town meeting. And apparently what happened is they sent out a request for a bid saying,
Yep.
we need 5 radio towers for this emergency system. One bidder gave a proposal with 5 towers. Another bidder showed up and said, you know what, you don't need 5 towers. You can do this with less, get the same efficiency, get the same coverage. And they gave a bid, which apparently from notes looks like it was about $1 million less. But the Board of Selectmen said, well, they didn't follow the guidelines. They didn't propose 5 towers.
Yeah.
So
They didn't propose what we asked for. They told us that we could do it for better.
you can do it.
Yeah.
You can do it
Cheaper.
cheaper for less. But because they didn't give what we asked for, they gave the bid to the higher bidder.
Yeah.
So
Where did when they sent out the request for the proposals or for the bids, where did they get the idea that they needed 5 towers?
I don't know.
I mean,
But,
so
what-
that's part of
what
the
I'm-
information.
Right.
That's the
So-
information they won't release until
Correct.
it's
Till it's too late.
Yeah. So, and you can look at the Board of Selectmen minutes for November 6, 2024. You can also look at the Board of Finance minutes for November 12th, which has some back and forth emails
Okay.
in those minutes, which talk about the $1 million. But I just think there are questions there that why would you just ignore a bid that's $1 million cheaper that claims to do the same job?
right.
Yeah.
So that's one example where it should be looked into more. And I should say that there is going to be a Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen meeting
This Monday.
this
Which
Monday, which
should be an
this
interesting
is
meeting.
being recorded on November 21st, so it may not air before that
Yeah.
meeting, but
Right.
if people want to attend it. But there have been
Wonderful.
other examples of fiscal.
Well, I know even last night at the Board of Selectmen meeting,
Last night, as in November 20th.
November,
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
November
last
20th.
last night, as in
Yeah.
November 20th, I attended the Board of Selectmen meeting.
Yeah.
And there was an issue on it about delinquent taxes. And if I understood correctly, they have a listing of houses or properties, I
Properties.
should say properties, that are delinquent.
Yes,
And,
including
they're-
commercial.
I'm sorry, including commercial.
commercial.
And there's 100 and something properties on that list.
Yeah, I believe that's what they said.
I think they said 100 and something properties. But there are some of them where the actual amount of money owed to the town is less than the interest accrued on the debt.
Yes. An example that was given was a homeowner or a property owner owed $4,000 in taxes from 2012, guys, and since all of the accrual for the interest, it's now $46,000.
So we've gone
Wow.
where from this person owed $4,000
Yes.
in 2012.
Yes.
And for whatever reason,
Yes.
year after year after year, we let it go until now between the $4,000 delinquent taxes and the accumulated interest, the person now owes $46,000.
That was my understanding, yeah.
And they could put a lien on the person. They could easily.
That's what they're doing.
They're putting a lien on the property.
What they're thinking of doing, they haven't done it yet. What they're thinking of doing is selling that to a third party
Collection.
collection agency. Thank you.
And the other thing that was interesting was that they're having, if I understood correctly, the town, in order to reach these 100 plus people on this list, the town attorney will be sending out letters
Yep.
They
to
have-
these people.
They have.
They have
Already sent out letters.
already. And the town will now be paying the attorney fees
Yes.
Right.
for sending out letters.
Yes.
Why isn't the tax collector doing it?
It's a
Yep.
good question.
Our elected town tax collector.
Right, the town collector, yes.
Yep.
So I get, that's another,
My understanding was she was uncomfortable approaching the people, and she is a tax collector.
well,
You know.
that seems to be a little
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
an
So it's-
oxymoron.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we're spending
from-
more wasteful spending by utilizing
An
the
attorney
town
to send
attorney
out
to send a
letters.
letter.
It's
And-
not even, so that's, yes, but also, we've gone since 2012.
Why so long?
Without
Yeah,
collecting
how do we
taxes.
how do you go?
Yeah.
How do you
It's
go
unfair.
that many
It's
years?
unfair to people who are paying their
How do you
taxes,
go 12
too.
years?
Yeah.
You go over a decade
Yeah.
without doing something and just
About
letting
this?
it
Yes.
ride?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that
And I
needs,
think we're at 1.25 million.
it's
owed.
in terms of what is
Uncollected.
owed.
Uncollected. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
However, to give, Colin, or
Give the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
the kudos, with those letters, they did receive $300,000 in unpaid.
They did. They did.
Yeah.
And at least at this point, there is also the other thing that I would like, we do need to recognize.
Yeah.
The
Under
Board of-
under threat of lien, though.
Yes, under threat
under
of lien.
threat.
That's
Yes.
right,
Yeah. So.
what I was
yeah.
going to say was that the Board of Selectmen do indeed recognize that their policy and their practice in the past is lacking.
Yes.
Yes.
And there was discussion also last night in terms of actually developing policies
Yes.
to go after, or I shouldn't go after is a bad choice of words,
Yes.
to actually try and to contact property owners
And accommodate them.
and to work out
Payment
some kind
plans.
of
Payment plans.
arrangements with them. And
Yeah.
that.
There seems to be an overarching theme of like with the punitive policies that they've been proposing. They've passed one. We've defeated 3 others that people have
Correct.
defeated. But
Correct.
there's a very punitive. It's punitive, and they're charging high fines on people. And so it seems like they are weaponizing government to go after people. And the concern by some is that they're going after political enemies in town. So that's something we have to be aware of and
Yep.
and fight it.
But to
Frankly.
kind of bring this all back together is while some people may be lamenting the results of the national election, never forget that your biggest impact is local.
Yes.
And
Town.
you can accomplish
You
so
can.
much at the municipal level. And the examples that we gave today with the blight, with the certificate of occupancy, with the town green policy, that was just, it doesn't take a lot of people.
No.
Yeah.
You know,
There
it's
weren't
a
that- yes, there weren't
small
that many.
group
Yep.
of dedicated people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, Margaret Mead's
And
quote.
speaking
Yeah.
of which, upcoming issues in town.
Yeah.
We have a couple minutes left. We have a couple of big issues
Yep.
looming at us. Well, charter revision has been at
Yep.
us
Yep.
looming for a while now. We've gone around the
Yep.
Yeah, I
Around
think
the-
we're kind of running out of time, so I think this is just a preview
yeah.
of what's
Yeah.
coming.
and
So
that's it. And the other big one we have is affordable housing.
that's
Yep. That's another.
That's gonna be a
We'll
huge
do a
And,
show on that
and
one.
we all know that the St. Joseph's property on Main Street
Yep.
has there's I believe there's what is now the 3rd
Yeah.
attempt to put affordable housing in that property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
I know last night at the Board of Selectmen meeting, or perhaps it was at the DTC meeting on Tuesday night, there was some discussion about affordable housing and a workshop that had been recently done.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, that was
in town,
Board of Selectmen maybe discussed it. Yeah.
The Board of
No,
Select,
no.
DTC.
DTC.
Yeah. And I guess with this, something I think might be an interesting topic for us to
Sure.
even look at
Yes.
in the
Absolutely.
future. I
Absolutely.
would love to see that what the workshop was, what the presentation was,
With the-
because I
Yes,
think
if,
with
with,
the
with
for-
that, what you're talking about is the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Yes,
The town,
thank you.
The town land attorney gave a presentation.
Yes. Yep.
We don't have a video of that, but if you go to the town website and
Right.
look for recordings under the Planning and
Right.
Zoning Commission for, I think it was the
Yep.
October meeting.
we can
And
use an
one thing-
audio recording.
Yep.
Yes,
Correct?
there's an audio
Yeah.
recording.
One thing about the affordable housing too, we were one of a handful of towns who had a moratorium, 4-year moratorium on affordable housing. We shouldn't have done that. We should have planned appropriately and accommodated to get us to the threshold we need.
And now they're doing
now,
that.
yeah.
And
now
there
we
are
got that.
people who are doing good work on
They
that.
are.
But that will be another,
Okay,
We're gonna have to-
episode.
10
we're gonna
seconds.
have to let that be another episode. We're going to have to just move right along
10
tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been Sunlight on Suffield. Good evening.
Okay.
Thank you.